Often in in the more traditional and antique in teachings, we are reminded that one of the most important qualities in our life in general, and in particular along our spiritual path, is enthusiastic effort. Enthusiastic effort is translated as is explained as having joy in virtue. And so we're reminded to have effort, to have joy in virtue. Remember, putting energy into something, it's not just about getting tired. It's about putting energy into something joyously, in what is positive, virtuous, important, but not easy. This is this is putting effort. One realizes effort when one puts energy into something important, virtuous, what's correct, what's right to do, when it becomes spontaneous and natural without having to, without it being difficult. But what I see in myself and what I see in the world around me, one of our human characteristics is that we're lazy, in the sense that it's very easy for us somehow. We relax in our comfort zone, and we create a situation, a context where we're relaxed, we're comfortable, we're fine, we feel good. Who wants to get out of that? Why should I change something? Why should I ever do something differently when I'm fine where I am? I'm comfortable where I am in this space. So even when we know conceptually that it would be better to do in one way or another, to do something or another, our tendency is to stay where we are in this comfort zone and think about this and think more about that present state instead of the future. we have this is interesting, this opposition, this contradiction that we have. So on one hand, it's difficult to be present in the present moment. Our mind is always going round and round and going towards the future, going towards the past. What's going to happen? How is it going to be? I don't, and on the other hand, instead, we think about the present needs, and it's difficult to act in the present with the awareness of what that present moment is going to bring in our mid and long term. We think about our immediate needs, more than our future needs. If I'm in pain in this present moment, I need to get out of that situation immediately. And if we have a possibility of having pleasure in this present moment, even if that will bring problems or suffering later, it doesn't matter. Just as long as in this present moment I can feel that pleasure. We have this strong tendency, this contradiction in some way. And when we see in different traditions, in many traditions, I mean, how do we encourage people to get out of a blocked or stalled state, to get out of this comfort zone where we're constantly familiarizing ourselves with things that are not beneficial? Because sometimes, for us, the solution is more tiresome than the problem itself. So I'm just going to stay where I am instead of putting in all of the effort to get out of this situation. An example, it's not the subject of today, but an example would be is when, for example, there's maybe a relationship between two people, a kind of codependency, and it's an unhealthy relationship. It's maybe there's violence, etc. And even the one who is the one who um, is is being abused, it's more difficult to get out of that situation than staying. I mean, we have, you know, we see a situation that is not healthy, but getting out of it, jumping into darkness, um, it's more frightening than staying in that difficulty that we know. So we say, okay, I'm going to stay with the problem that I already know instead of jumping into the void. Who knows? Maybe it'll just go worse. I mean, that's true, but you know, but for there to be change, there needs to be movement, there needs to be energy. Otherwise, it's just going to um, be reinforced, that current situation. So if we look at what was used often, as an incentive to change, to put this effort into things, there are mostly two or three types of incentives. Mm, One is where we say it's an incentive based on fear. So if you keep on like this is going to happen. An example of like the cigarette package. You have a person of you have a photograph of someone with cancer. They don't smoke because this is going to happen to you. So we highlight possible negative results of what someone is doing. So when trying to encourage us to get out of a habit, to change a lifestyle, to do something based on fear. If you do this, this is going to happen. On the other hand, there's the other type of incentive, which is to be rewarded. If you do this instead, you're going to receive this. If you do this, even if it's difficult and you don't like it, you're going to get this positive result and it'll be positive for you. You'll have this prize, this benefit. And if we see very often in our lives, we're guided somehow, more than guide, we're encouraged by rewards and fear. And there's the third incentive, which is moral. That you shouldn't do this. You no. After I've been taught not to do this. I'm a good person. I shouldn't do this. You know, and so there's a moral incentive. So these are the three main types of incentives that we have. Sometimes, instead, I have this feeling, maybe I'm wrong, that we're living a time where often these, it's as if the incentives had lost their strength. Let me explain myself better. When there's the incentive, and like a negative incentive, like we need to stop polluting the planet, otherwise we will not be able to live here anymore. Look, there's global warming. We can't keep creating CO2. I mean, in just a few years, there won't be a healthy environment for us to live in. And then what happens? Little, very little. This is just an example. But what seems to me is that in front of this incentive or this which is not small, more than getting us to move, very often we just stay blocked. waiting for someone to do something to resolve the situation. There's this situation. I don't want to live that situation ever. Talking about the environment, for example, it's not just about what the scientists and the governments are saying in the media. I mean, just look at the weather. Just talk to a farmer. You don't need to go very far to understand that really there is climate change. There are different weather plant patterns that are not indifferent, and we're strongly that the planet is strongly influenced by man. But even seeing that clearly, often we stay in this state where we say, okay, well, what I do is so little; it doesn't have much impact, and we let a kind of, it's not a hope, but this feeling of it doesn't depend on me, let those in charge do what they need to do. And so we're blocked in the state where we find ourselves. We say, I can put great effort, but at the end of the day, why should I keep my heating low at home, I mean, actually the ones who are really polluting are the the big industries. So should I why should I limit my use of single-use plastic when those who are really polluting are those who are throwing it into the ocean? So this kind of reasoning blocks us. So where we can't believe in ourselves and have faith in ourselves that we can do something. So let's call it this incentive based on fear. It's as if it didn't have an individual effect. I don't know if it's clear what I'm saying. So instead, I'm just going to keep going on in my comfortable life, trying to keep it the way it is, with the hope that the world is going to go in one direction or another. One direction instead of another. And instead, the macro doesn't exist without the micro. And when we see so many things, it's as if, oh, it would be wonderful, we see the positive incentives, encouragements. Oh, it would be wonderful if this was like this, if we lived in a more harmonious society, a society where there was really more peace. It would be beautiful if we were in more contact with nature. It would be wonderful if we could have a less stressful lifestyle, etc., etc. And we have these positive incentives. So it would be wonderful if, but why? But we could say, well, why should I put effort into that? Because I'll never manage. Why should I try? Often people say to themselves, I'm not even going to try because I'm never going to realize that myself. And these are 2 points that personally, these are 2 points that make me worry. What we can do is it depends on us. It's in our own hands, and it depends on effort. It's tiresome to change lifestyle. Physically, also in our social relations. Also depending the way of thinking. I mean, just changing habits is tiresome, is difficult, and to make a radical change in our habits, we need these incentives. As I said before, there are 3. If you do this, it's going to go badly. If you do this way, it's going to go well. Or it's right to do in this way and wrong to do in that way. These are the 3 types of incentives that we have. And I don't know how to say it really well, but it's as if sometimes when you repeat something again and again, at a certain point, that thing loses its power. It's, we just get used to it. And hear we hear about the global warming, the planet, the environment, and we go, well, yesterday I was watching the news, and in Indonesia they were saying they have an enormous problem with garbage, with plastic, and practically all of the dumps, all of the garbage dumps are practically all full, and they don't know where to put their garbage. Okay, and then one watching the news, and you just go on to the next piece of news, and then the next, and the next, and somehow we're just used too much, to see certain things. I mean, how much garbage do you make? I mean, I, how often do you ask yourself, where does my garbage go? The other day, I asked someone here in the area who knows a little bit more, here in this area, where does the garbage go? And he said, here it's taken to this place. The plastic is burned. Um, paper is paper is recycled, and he explained this. And if we think, when I'm part, how much of a part am I of what happens? I mean, we live in a society where our choices have an enormous power, but at the same time, it feels like from our point of view, they don't have any strength. We say, oh, we live, we say in this capitalistic world, money talks more than anything else. As consumers, can we influence things or not? Yes, of course. If I stop buying things that are wrapped in plastic, for example, I'm doing my part. If I try to buy with more awareness, even if it costs a little bit more, or it's a little bit, it takes a little bit, it's less convenient. I have to go to the farmer or the local producer instead of the supermarket, but I'm doing my part if I can do like that. And our small actions have enormous strength. We live in times where when we look around us, when we watch the news and we see what's happening to the planet, there's many things that are there are many incentives that are based on fear, when we see the situation as it's going, the environment, the conflicts, when we see the level of superficiality, and many, many other aspects, when we see something that also worries me a lot, when we see, the levels of sicknesses, mental sicknesses, in the Western world. It's frightening how widespread these are. So there are many incentives that tell us we should do things differently, but what's important that it shouldn't stay far from us, where we think I am not part of this. When I see the plastic, the garbage, you know, you know, or the people that are living in the middle of this masses of plastic garbage, or and or just or people who buy you know people buy in salad or something that's already washed because you don't want to waste time washing your vegetables, and then you're just buying more plastic for that. I mean, this is terrible. what's really hurting us. This is a rule that is being applied. This kind of um, this rule of maximum comfort and minimum effort. You know, where we can do something that diminishes the effort that we need to put into something and have as much comfort as possible, let it come. And we have this strange idea that if I put less effort into something and have more comfort, then I'll be happier. And it's a total illusion because at the end of the day, the state of satisfaction and balance and joy and happiness, it doesn't come from comfort. And I don't, and 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 just total relaxation and doing nothing. You know, when you have nothing to do and you have no needs and no function, and you know, is that person happier? Is more relaxed? No. It's, so that law of of maximum comfort and minimum effort, you know, it is not healthy. It's not beneficial. But my point is that each one of us in our lifetimes, in our life, in our togetherness, in the, where we where we put our energy makes a tremendous difference for ourselves and for others. And when we see something outside of ourselves that that we don't think is good, it's fundamental to look in our own lives how and on what level we participate in that, and how I can also do the opposite. Rinpoche, for example, he often reminded us, saying, we live in degenerate times, but in our small way, we are living in a golden age. And this is, I'm fine, you're fine. When they ask me, you know, ask me how I am, I'm fine. I'm happy. When I look around me, you know, the world is not the perfect world that I'd like to live in so many aspects, but but then I ask myself, what can I do? What should I do in my small way, in my actions? What can I do to try to direct myself towards something better? So al- allow our allow allow the situations around us to become incentives for our lives, and not simply see what is around us as if it were a kind of movie, and in some and stay in our little world of pizza and Netflix. You know, everyone has his own. You know, each one has his own story. Instead of pizza, you have organic salad. Instead of Netflix, you know, you have spiritual entertainment. Excuse me if I use this term, but one stays closed in one's own world and doesn't see the connection between himself and others. And there are many ways that we interact. Oh, but the first way, and one of the most important, is, you know, how do we live our lives? How do we interact with others? What are the choices that we make in our lives? Very often, getting out of one's comfort zone is really beneficial, not harmful. But often, getting in a situation where being in a situation where there's a kind of a malaise is good, because getting out of one's comfort zone allows us to say, okay, I need to do something differently here. I can't keep going on like this. And what happens, for example, is when someone has a lifestyle that is not healthy and then gets sick, one gets out of his comfort zone because there are the symptoms. There are symptoms, there's pain, the ramifications of the sickness, and at the point one changes how one eats, one sleeps, what one does, and one needs to make changes because he's outside of his comfort zone. But an important thing, and Lama Ganchen talked a lot about this. He often would talk about the importance of doing something before it's too late. Before the problem exists. I need to take care of my health before I'm sick. I need to cultivate a peaceful and healthy relationship with another before fighting, arguing. We shouldn't wait. We shouldn't wait for there to be problems to resolve them. We need to prevent, not just remedy. And doesn't mean living in fear. It means cultivating and supporting, sustaining what is healthy and virtuous, and in opposition to what is not. But often, cultivating what is virtuous and healthy and good, that requires a certain amount of effort. Unfortunately, often we're not able to put effort into something until we're outside of that comfort zone. And we shouldn't wait for something to happen to us, that just throws me outside my comfort zone before I start doing something about it. An example, let's give you an example. In our generation, we're living, it seems to me, we're seeing the importance of being more in contact with nature. This illusion of modern lifestyle where one doesn't need to be in contact with nature, where you can just have everything at your fingertips, or you don't need to dirty your hands with the you don't need to get your hands dirty. Everything's just convenient and there for you. We've seen that at the end of the day, it's just not working. The pollution aside, and the quality of food, and the mental states that this is all creating. I mean, all of that from not being in contact with nature. I think that one of the important causes of psychological problems and sicknesses is created from the lack of direct contact with nature. I don't mean that we have too few days of vacation at the seaside. This is not what I mean. Because even when one goes to the beach, one goes on to a chaise longue instead of touching the sands. No, I'm talking about touching. I'm talking about drinking the water that comes from a mountain source instead of water from a bottle. Working, a garden, understanding the times of nature, that we need to learn to wait. We need to trust. We're losing this more and more. So at least we should start in our small world to get closer to nature, to do something, each one of us. Is it tiresome? Yes. But also the results on the other side are more tiresome, let's say. So one of the hardest things for us is finding this middle way, finding this right balance. Our tendency is to go from one extreme to another. We should always try to maintain this balance. But a fundamental point is when we see something that we don't like, for example, like the pollution, or the conflicts, even in social media, hate, shouldn't be pointing fingers and blaming. We should make sure that we on in our small way that we are not adding to the problem. I don't know if this is clear. Because if I see an act of hate and I condemn it, the last thing I need to do is to act with hate, aggression myself. In my small way, let's remember that the the micro creates the micro creates the macro. There 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 is no union without its parts. And in our society, each one of us is a small part. This is why it's very important to to see how we act daily in every situation. Another aspect instead is when we find ourselves a little bit outside our comfort zone. This has a particular function. It somehow it helps us prioritize to see our priorities, and this is very beneficial. This is good. If we see many teachings, they often try to remind us about this, talking about impermanence, talking about the certainty of death, talking about the uncertainty of the moment of death, and where one is going to be reincarnated. We're talking about the hells, etc. Trying to wake us up. Let's do something. Where are we? Let's look at our priorities. Because normally, Lama wants to see he wants to see the clock, just to be able to. Okay. We spend a good part of our lives, as Atisha said, he says, distracted in it. We're talking about the 11th century in Tibet. Atisha said, during the day we're distracted, and at night we sleep. And life goes on. Distracted means there are two main types of distractions: problems and pleasures. What are we distracted by? We're distracted. We're distracted. Um, we're distracted from. We're distracted from ourselves, from our inner path. We're we're distracted from using this life as a tool to be a positive independence for the world and to cultivate our qualities. And once, if one tried to wake up, wake us up, saying one day you're going to die, and you don't know where you're going to be reborn, there's a hell here, and there's a whole description of possible future suffering. Today we don't need this. We don't need all of that. Look, the problems exist. I mean, there's global warming. There's problems with the environment. A few days ago, there are many scientific articles that are saying that in about 5 years, if the things keep going the way they're going, there will be the Antarctic will actually, the glaciers of the Antarctic will come undone, will melt and raise the actual height of the water levels. I mean, it seems like we're talking about a science fiction movie here. But what I mean is, I mean, we have many things in front of us, that are telling us that we need to make our life useful. We need to do something now without waiting who knows what. We don't have much time to lose. Also because life goes by quickly, and one could say, people ask me if I know what's going to happen, and my answer is no. Do you know what's going to happen with the war? I have no idea. Sincerely speaking, the variables are many, and I know a very, 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 very small part. Well, I think I understand a very small part. How could I say what's going to happen, how it is, how it isn't? But one thing I'm sure about, how I live my day to day is going to influence tomorrow. And another aspect that's even more important is it's not so important what happens, because no one has tools to control what happens. We have the tools to influence in our small way, to influence what happens, but not totally. So once we let go of this idea that we can control what's happening, it's useless to use up energy about worrying about what's going to happen. Instead, I should use my energy to cultivate the resources that I possess to face whatever happens. Doesn't matter how they go. They go one way or another. It doesn't matter. Patience, stability, joy, love, concentration. These are important. Having a life that is consistent with our principles, this is fundamental. One of the most important things for me is, I can be in a world that's just going crazy, but I need to stay sane. Even if everyone around me has fallen into an abyss of hate, I'm going to stay. I'll stay with my love, even in the middle. In a world where everyone has gone crazy, the sane person is seen as being crazy. I prefer to be considered crazy if in that context. It's fundamental for us to cultivate our qualities, maintain with constancy our values, our principles. This is fundamental. And in our inside, and that's going to then show up on the outside. So in the end, we should cultivate our daily self, and put effort into getting away from distractions and make our life meaningful, with joy. It's true. There are many, many difficult situations around us, and not just today. I mean, talking just so many years now. It's sad to say, but some things just don't even make the news anymore, and not because they're not huge problems or difficulties, but just because we've just gotten used to them. But in our small world, in our small way, what can we do? And and I'm going to repeat this. I've said this already. That what's important. I mean, If I'm against violence, if I'm against conflicts, war, and the violence, I mean, I am, I need to be against and not follow this dynamic, even in my very, very small reality, because the war and conflicts, they're born from hate, from selfishness, from ignorance. Someone can ask me, but how could the war even happen? How is it that one can attack another person, kill another person, or act with so much violence in this way? In the same way that it's possible that we fight within our own family. I don't know you've ever seen fights within a family. Two different points of view, and the point of view of one is more important than the point of view of the other. Each one has his own selfishness, his own arrogance, and conflict starts, and then there's the anger, and we generate also hate, and we to try to push one's own reality onto the other, verbally, physically, etc. So what changes is just the measure of it all. One, gives us a slap of the hand, and the other one sends a missile. Of course, I can't say it's the same thing, but I at the root, we are at the root. At that point, we're cultivating the same, or living the same. So, in our lives, we should say, okay, I don't want to be part of violence, so I need to avoid it in my daily life. And Rinpoche, he reminded us this so often, that peace depends on inner peace of each one, and it's something that should be cultivated. It's something that we need to construct, to build up. So when we see great conflicts, they can, if we know how, they can be incentives for ourselves to go beyond our small inner conflicts, to go beyond, to cultivate peace, because it's much easier just to fight than to be at peace. It requires effort. It's not something that it's just happens. And peace is not just the lack of conflict, it's harmony. And harmony should be cultivated. The relationships in the family, among friends, this context in which I live, all should be cultivated. And to cultivate peace, we have to get out of our comfort zone. Because if I'm in my comfort zone and you're in your own, and if they meet perfectly, then there's peace. But if these two comfort zones don't meet, and I don't want to get out of mine, and you don't want to get out of yours, and then at that point, the conflict arises. I mean, how often have we seen conflicts, come about for just stupid things? So keeping peace and harmony requires getting out of one's comfort zone, and requires effort. But it brings great benefit. But we need to cultivate it with ourselves, with the people around us, and with our relationships with others. This harmony, this friendship, peace, it's something that needs to be sustained. It needs to be cultivated, and it requires effort in every context in which we live in. But I just want to repeat just one more time that when we see something that we don't like outside, instead of just pointing the finger and saying, this is horrible, this is not right, okay, say it if it works. but I need to see how that reflects my life. I mean, where is it in my life that I do something similar? Where is there violence in my life? Where is there any kind of ability to see others, and how can I change that? Because in my daily behavior, I'm bringing an effect towards the macro, towards the society. So effort is one of the most important qualities. It's said that in a text, I don't remember exactly which one, but it says, even an ant, if it puts effort with constancy and in the right direction, will become a Buddha. In the sense that if we walk in the right direction, sooner or later, we're going to get there. And it's said that also, you know, in the spiritual context or studies, those who have optimum conditions um, are it's the defect for them, in the sense that sometimes one relaxes and there's a comfort zone in one's own intelligence and doesn't have to put much effort into it. In the monastery, for example, they would give two examples. There was one monk. In the monastery, everyone gets a nickname, and they gave this nickname to this monk called Metal Ring, because unfortunately, this poor guy, when he got there, he didn't have a good ability to memorize. He wasn't very intelligent, and when studying, memorization is fundamental. And normally, a young a young child can memorize four lines a day. Sange chudan soge chanamla chanchu bardu dani gepsuji, etc. For 4 lines, that's the minimum. And this guy couldn't even memorize these 4 lines, and they tried it every way, and he just wasn't able. And his teacher got tired, and he gave him a metal ring, and he said, you put this on the page, and what's inside the ring, memorize that. And every day he would just put the ring on the page and stay there for hours, and he would memorize that. And they used to make fun of him. Oh, look at him. And so they named him Metal Ring. Instead, there are others who could ring, the others could memorize 20 pages a day. But after 30 years, and he didn't skip a single day of memorizing that 1/3 of a line, not even on the holidays. After 30 years, he had accumulated more knowledge and a quality, a constancy in practice much better than those who could memorize 20 pages a day. He didn't become the greatest master of philosophy, but he was able to do so much. And I remember that this is one of the examples that's given. It's more important to have constancy than have, these like huge efforts, great as mountains. When you have enthusiastic effort, gradually, step after step, you can do incredible things. For me, and I remember when I heard an audio tape, and that it talked about the life of Joseph Pilates, who developed this system of Pilates. When he was born, he had rickets. He was very weak. He always had the fever, and his father had a gym. And there were athletes who went to train there, and he wanted to be an athlete too, but no one had any hope for him, and they would have him, just do very easy exercises, just as kind of a joke. But he would stay late. He would, he never stopped, and he was able to cure himself of rickets, and he developed this method to cure himself because, he he needed to heal himself. And this is, and on this basis, he developed Pilates and is able to help so many people, you know. And then he developed his perfect state of perfect body and health up until into his 80s. But he wasn't born this uh, with such positive conditions. So when we have so many positive conditions, maybe we're too relaxed and we don't get outside our comfort zone. But what gives us good results more than positive conditions is effort, is the energy that we put into something, more than the conditions that we already have. So we could just give so many examples about this. So let's not underestimate the importance of putting energy into what is positive and virtuous, even if it's a little tiring. And this is one of the, it's not for nothing that it's one of the qualities that should be perfected, as Buddha says. One of these so-called paramitas, one of the qualities to perfect, just put energy into things with joy. Um, it's 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 joy in virtue, even if it's tiresome. Don't be afraid of working hard, because on the base, you know, maximum comfort, minimum effort. There, you can see we're afraid of working hard. We're afraid of getting tired, and by being afraid of working hard, we lose so many opportunities. I don't know if that's clear. I remember once this scene in Tibet. This boy, who, it was the winter, and he was in his room. It was like in a corridor, and these walls made up of thin wall board, and there were so many and there's so many drafts, cold winter drafts. It was December. It was very cold, and I remember, and in bed I had, I don't know how many pashminas and blankets and electric blankets I had. I was just shaking. I was so cold, and I was just very, very cold. I got to the monastery, and our experience is subjective. You can see this. And I went to this boy in his room, and winter hadn't even really started. And I said, "Aren't you cold here in the winter?" And he looked at me as if I was saying the most stupid thing ever. He looked at me and he said, "It's cold in the winter." And so what he taught me in that moment was, obviously, one would try to warm up if you feel cold, but we should not just fill up our minds with the problem, with the effort that one needs to. But instead, his mind was filled with study and meditation and work, and not just it's cold, it's cold, it's cold, it's cold, and I don't have a blanket, and that one is warm and I'm cold, and this mind just goes in a whole loop and just stays there. Okay, if he said, if I'm cold, I go to the kitchen, and there's a wood burning stove. But just remember to put energy into what's virtuous and not allow ourselves to fill up our inner space with things that don't bring real benefit, where we just stay trapped in the fear and in complaining, etc., etc. So, in essence, we put our energy in what we believe in. We should be the world that we want to create, that we want, and live consistently with the world that we want to create and we want to see. This is fundamental for each one of us, and this requires effort. It requires getting out of our comfort zone. It requires putting energy in this direction. Okay? Let's do our dedications.
Lame kutse rapten chi namkara trinle chokchur gepad losan tempe drume sasum ki druwe munsela taktu ne gyur chi kewa kuntu yanda lama dan drame chiki pela longchu chin sadan lamge yende rabzo ne dorje changi kopa nyur tobesho nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delek shin ninsen taktu delek pe kuncho sumki chingi lop kuncho sumki ngodrubu tsul kuncho sumki trashi sho.
At dawn or at dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.